So, what can we get involved with in this interaction tonight that will really be useful in terms of your recognizing the difference between who you are and the thinking activity that produces this idea of your being this personality, this person, this story that you have about your life, that's being produced all the time. Yeah. So I really want to focus on, how can we interact about this that will give you more access to this, give you more access to the truth, give you more access to the freedom that is always available when you recognize the reality of who you are, right? And one of the things about this that's important to take note of is that I said this to a person that I was working with today. This business of who you are can't be that difficult because you're being it right now. It can't be that foreign because you're being it right now. Can't be that mysterious because you're being it right now. And yet it does occur that way, doesn't it? It does occur like, when I was talking to this client today, I said, I never thought of that. I never thought of that. Yeah, that's the problem. You can't think of that. You can't think the truth because the truth is not a concept, right? And yet it is the truth of what you are. It is reality. So what would give you more access? What would give you more access? If you pay attention, which is the practice of meditation, right? When you're practicing meditation, you're practicing paying attention, right? And not just paying attention, but you're practicing paying attention with an intention. And when you pay attention with the intention of noticing, right? It's not just paying attention. You're paying attention with the intention of noticing. And the intention is to notice what? So if that's the intention, now you're practicing meditation, right? You have you're practicing paying attention, so you notice attention. You notice attention. You notice that if I say to you right now, put your attention in the big toe in your right foot. Put your attention in the big toe of your right foot, right? Do it, right? What happens? Do you notice that you're more aware of your toe than you were before I said that? Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So whatever you put your attention on you become more aware of. Yes? Yeah. Whatever you put your attention on, you become more aware of. So going back to what you were saying, because meditation becomes the application of the understanding. This is important. Most people don't know that meditation is not meant to be a practice just for stress reduction. It's not meant to be a practice where you just do the technique, just do the technique. No, there's understandings involved in this. If you look at any of the ancient teachings where meditation was practiced, right, it was practiced alongside of an understanding. A teaching was practiced alongside of a teaching, right? So if you're going to learn how to drive a car, right, you have to go and you have to study the rules of the road, right? You have to take a written test to get your license, right? There's an understanding about what you're going to do, so that when you go to drive the car, you apply that understanding to driving the car, and that's how you succeed in driving the car. Right? It's the same thing with meditation. It's the same. And one of the things, unfortunately, is because we live in a commercialized reality, everything gets packaged, right? So meditation got packaged. It became a commercial reality. It's worth billions of dollars now, right? It became a commercial reality. And if you're going to sell something, you got to make it simple. You got to make it something that people can easily relate to and desire. Something that's easy to do, right? And so they say, okay, well, we won't get into the teachings. That's esoteric, And not only that, that's Buddhist. And we're not going to get into religion because we're going to upset somebody. Right? So let's just dumb it down. We'll dumb it down, right? Well, that's good in a way because more people got exposure to the idea of meditation. More people got exposure to the technique of meditation, and it does reduce stress, so there's nothing wrong with any of that. Unfortunately, unfortunately, the baby got thrown out with the bathwater. Because without the teachings, it's like having a gun and not having any ammunition. You know, without the teachings, it's like, you know, having a car, but you don't know what to do with it, right? So the teachings are essential. And when you study the teachings and you apply the teachings, then when you go to practice meditation, you're practicing paying attention, and now you have an intention because of the understandings you have. The understandings make it possible if you have an intention, and your intention when you're paying attention is to notice, right? Is to notice. And in the practice of meditation, we say, okay, the technique is to notice thinking, and then move your attention away from the thinking activity to the body breathing. Right? That's the technique, right? Yeah. So when you do that, first of all, you're noticing thinking, right? Right away, that's something different because most people don't notice thinking, right? Most people don't notice thinking because most people don't know what thinking is. Most people don't notice thinking because they think they're thinking. You can't notice thinking if you think you're thinking. No, you have to see thinking separately. You have to see thinking as an activity that occurs in language in your mind as a voice, doesn't it? Isn't it amazing that most people go through their entire life and they never hear that? They never hear it, right? And yet if you look, it's undeniable, right? If I say to you, isn't it the case that thinking, when I say, what are you thinking? What I'm saying to you is, what's the voice in your head saying? Isn't that what I'm asking you? What the voice in your head? And yet, when I say, what's the voice in your head saying, you have to look to see what it says to tell me what you think. Something's wrong with this picture. If I ask you what you think, you don't know what you think when I ask you, so you have to check. And when you check to see what the voice said to tell me what you think. And at the same time, you still believe you're thinking those thoughts. At the same time, you still believe you're thinking those thoughts. It can't be true you're thinking those thoughts. It can't be true. The evidence is obvious. It can't be true that you're thinking those thoughts, right? So when you practice meditation, you're practicing noticing thinking, and this is where the understanding comes in, but not as the thinker of those thoughts. That's not true. We're trying to get to the reality of the situation. We're trying to get out of the misconceptions. We're trying to get away from the misunderstanding so we can get something that grounds us in what's real, right? Because if you're grounded in something that's not real, it's not going to work. You have to be grounded in what's real for your life to work. And it is not real that you think your thoughts. And you know, that's so ingrained, that is so completely ingrained in your brain that you can't even talk about it without saying that I think my thoughts. If I ask you what thoughts are occurring in your mind, it's so ingrained that your answer will be telling me what you think. Isn't it? Yeah, so you lie. So you lie. And you've been lying a long time and you don't know you're lying, right? So in meditation, not only are we practicing paying attention, we're going to use the attention to notice thoughts. We're going to use the attention to look and notice thoughts are happening, and I am not causing them.
It makes you more aware of your thoughts.
No, you see, she just demonstrated what I said. It makes you more aware of your thoughts.
Of the thoughts that you have that are not you.
That's right. That's right. But you see, it's so ingrained that when you go to say it, you still say it makes you more aware of your thoughts. Because that's so much.
More aware that they're not your thoughts.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And if you become aware of something that you have believed all your life that's not true, and the idea that you think it's true has caused you immeasurable suffering, don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? Right? that you start to be able to notice that there is an activity occurring in the mind called thinking. And you're not doing it. It's happening. It's just happening, right? And it's a voice in your head, right? And so as you pay attention to this in meditation, if you pay attention to the thinking activity, and you move your attention out of that activity to being aware of the body breathing, now, because now what we're saying here is it's possible for you to exist without thinking. Aren't we saying that? Yeah, we're saying you can move your attention away from the thinking activity and have that attention be focused on the body breathing without there being any thinking. You can do it, right? I mean, another way of saying the same thing is that we know, even from a scientific perspective, that thinking is nonstop. Thinking is not nonstop. Thinking is not nonstop, is it? Now, even between thoughts, there is the absence of thinking, right? There's spaces, right? So we know there is this reality called awareness, right? Because when you move the attention through the intention to notice thinking, not like I'm doing it, but it's happening, and I'm going to move my attention to the body breathing. And when I move my attention to the body breathing and focus my attention there, I can notice there's a difference. There's a difference now. There's no thinking here. And if I'm paying attention and I'm practicing the way it's meant to be done, I'll notice when thinking starts again. And when I notice that it starts again, I'll move my attention away from the thinking activity back to the body breathing. Now, here's the question. When your attention is out of the thinking activity and the attention is on the body breathing, right? How do you answer the question, who are you? This is an experiment. I want you to experiment with this, right? If your attention is out of the thinking activity and the attention is aware of the body breathing, that's what's happening. No thinking, aware of the body breathing. And now the question is, who are you? How do you answer?
Your awareness, your breathing, that's it. That's how I get back to it.
Yeah, but that's a thought.
But it's not a thought if you realize that you've deviated from the thinking to the breathing. And the breathing, that's it. And you realize that your mind is still going and you're not thinking about that. You're not giving that any life.
Right. So your awareness is on the body breathing, right?
Yeah.
And I ask you, who are you? Right? How are you going to answer?
Doesn't matter.
Oh, yes, it does.
All it matters is that you're breathing right now and you're in awareness.
Yeah. See, this is what happens. She didn't, now watch, please. She just didn't notice that she started thinking and answering the question by thinking about it. And if I question that, right? If I question that, then the thinking gets more convoluted. Oh, it doesn't matter. And we can go on forever. The reality of it is, when you're experiencing awareness of the body breathing and there's no thinking, you can't even think the question, let alone answer the question. You can't even think the question, let alone answer the question, right? So then what's the deal? Well, what the deal is you're experiencing who you are and you can't speak about it. You're experiencing who you are. If you try and speak about it, you go back into thinking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is something that because of the fact that it's transparent, awareness is transparent. Like the space in this room is transparent, right? You can't see it. It's non-conceptual, right? So you're actually learning what it's like to experience being you. You're learning what it's like to experience being you, and you're learning that it's possible to be aware of what's happening without thinking about it. In fact, you're learning that being aware of what's happening without thinking about it is more realistic, is more effective. That's why a race car driver that's driving a car that's going 240 miles an hour, right, knows that he better not think about it. That's pure awareness driving the car. Pure awareness. Can't be done any other way. Can't be done. Because that car is going so fast. It's traveling so much ground so fast. You can't think fast enough to anticipate what's happening. You can't do it. You cannot do it. So the evidence is there that it is possible to be aware of what's happening and respond to it without thinking. If you're a professional tennis player, right? That ball's coming over the net at 130 miles an hour, okay? If you have to think about what you're going to do to hit that ball, no possibility. Not possible. You can't think faster than the ball's coming at you, right? So how do you hit the ball? You train yourself to be present. You train yourself to keep your eye on the ball, right? And completely give your attention to that without thinking. You're actually meditating when you hit the ball. You're meditating when you hit the ball. You're meditating when you're driving a race car. You're meditating when you're driving a race car. When you're a runner and you're in the zone, you're meditating when you're running. Because you are so totally involved, you're so totally into the experience of what's happening, right? That it doesn't require any thought. There's an immediate feedback. There's immediate direct feedback when you're in the zone. Immediate feedback when you're in the zone. So when you're practicing meditation, you're developing a natural ability to be present that's always available to you, right? But you've been preoccupied. You're living your life in a thought process. You're literally living your life in a thought process. If I ask you what's happening in your life, you tell me what you think, don't you? I'm a therapist, I know this. When people come to me, I say, okay, why are we here? They tell me what they think. And when they tell me what they think, they tell me a story, don't they? Right? And when they tell me the story, it's always the same reality. It's always the same reality, right? If they would only stop doing this to me, right? I gotta get a divorce to get rid of this person. They're the problem. They're driving me crazy. If my kids would only leave me alone, right? And the real issue, if you really want to get into where to talk to stop bothering you, right? Then you have to talk to the voice in your head. That's the real issue. That's the real problem, because it takes what's going on, right? What's going on is just what's going on. That's it. That's what awareness sees. Awareness sees what's going on, doesn't it? What's going on is what's going on. When you meditate, awareness is aware of meditating, right? And then after the meditation, somebody will say, that was very difficult. Where was the difficulty going on? When you're meditating, Where's the difficulty that's going on, right? No, it's going on because after the meditation, you go through a thought process, right? And the thought process is one in which you judge and evaluate everything all the time. So meditation is not going to escape that, right? So you'll judge and evaluate the meditation. Oh, it was very difficult. That difficulty was totally a thought process. There was no, show me difficulty. You say meditation is difficulty? Can you please show me the difficulty? Where's the difficulty? There's a lot of words that don't exist anywhere but in language, right? Does difficulty exist anywhere but in language? Yeah, because it's a mental state and it doesn't exist in reality. It only exists as a mental state. Difficulty only exists as a mental state. So this is what we're dealing with here, because until you start to see this, until you can take the view of being a detached observer of what I'm describing, until you can take the view of being a detached observer of what I'm pointing to, right? then you're in the drama, in the story, as the person suffering, aren't you? You're in the story as the person, believing that you think your own thoughts, right? Causing yourself suffering by those thoughts, causing yourself suffering by the way you're interpreting what's going on in your life. That's your story, right? And your story is always a story where it's a movie, right? Your story is like a movie, right? And you're the star, and everybody else is supporting actors in the movie, right? And it's a drama. It's always a drama, right? Well, first of all, when you meditate, you move from being an actor in the drama, right? You move from being an actor in the drama to being the awareness of the actor. That's a huge difference. You move from being the actor in the drama to being the awareness of the actor. You have the ability to have an unattached witness, an unattached observation of the thinking, the physical sensations, the emotions. All of that adds up to, right, the personality's experience, right? Emotions are energy, emotion, energy and motion, right? The body-mind function, the body-mind operation requires energy and uses energy, to deal with threat, like fear is energy, right? Yeah. So energy has a practical, functional reality, right? When it's being utilized in the process of being a person functioning in the world, okay? In this work, we're stepping back from being the person functioning in the world, asking questions about energy. We're moving back from being a person functioning in the world, asking questions about energy, to the unattached observer of all that. That's the shift. That's the same shift you're making in the meditation practice, isn't it? Right? Because when you make that shift and you're the observer of that, you're not the thinker of the thoughts. You're not the one that thought to ask a question. Well, it's confusing, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, because you've been involved in these understandings for a little bit, right? So you're putting Drano in the you're putting Drano in the drain, yeah. Right? You're putting something that's neutralizing the insanity into the mix, right? And so then you're going to have confusion. Oh no, now what's true? What's true? Who am I? Is this true? Is that true? Right? So the thing is this, that one of the ways the mind will try and survive with you being a person, right, is to have you be confused about it. That's how it will ward off, that's how it'll dismiss and ward off this wisdom, right? Because this wisdom is threatening the existence of the person that's asking this question. You see what I'm saying? Sure. But the person will maintain the idea that, no, I have to get information. We're information driven, aren't we? Oh no, I need more information. Help me, give me more information. Give me useful information. Give me powerful information. Because we all know information makes the difference, right? Really? How's it working out? Well, that's something to expect. That's something to expect in any exercise or practice in which you're letting go of trying to hold on to be in control, and you're letting go and being open-minded and receptive, right? That's a different way of being. That's a different way of being. And so when you let go of holding on and trying to be in control, and you're receptive and you're open, right? Guess what? The emotions that have been repressed will naturally start to come up because they're not being held down anymore. This is a good thing. It's called healing, right? And so when it happens, you welcome it. See, that's the problem. We got it all backwards. When we start to have intense emotions, we try to avoid it. When we start to have intense emotions, we try and contain it, control it, repress it, get away from it, right? Nobody likes to be, I don't like confrontation. I don't even like confrontation with myself. I don't even like confrontation with my own emotions, right? So when you begin to understand the truth, you begin to understand, you welcome what's happening. You welcome. Everything that's happening is beyond what you may understand, but nonetheless supporting you. Beyond what you may understand, but nonetheless supporting you. Because all the things that are happening that are causing you more and more suffering and more confusion and more aggravation and more attempts to try and be in control and more attempts to try and figure out an answer to all this, right? All that stuff that's happening has a purpose. And the purpose it has, believe it or not, is for you to stop. Just stop. When you're being crazy, what's the solution? Stop. Right? And if you wake up, if you start to see things as they are, you will stop, because it'll be obvious how crazy it is. It'll be obvious how crazy it is. Because why? Because you'll be able, as you practice meditation, you're developing the ability to be the detached observer instead of the person. You can observe you can observe the personality. You can observe the personality. You can observe the thought process of the personality. And you can see how it will compulsively behave, irrationally behave. Its behavior is not at all rational and consistent with what's happening, right? So when you develop the ability to meditate and have more consistent awareness of your attention, you begin to understand that the only way you can really succeed in being in this world is you have to have attention going this way, which is the way most people's attention's going all the time, and you have to have attention going this way too. You have to see what's happening. You have to see what's happening in the mind. You have to see what's happening in the body. You have to see what's happening energetically. You have to see what's happening emotionally, and you have to see what's happening in the world. And when, as awareness, you are aware of all that, there's a natural response. You don't have to think about it. If you think about it, what's going to happen? The thinking is going to be drawing upon your past experience, bringing up your fears, having you react, and using a situation that happened in the past to behave in a situation that's happening now, even if the situation that's happening now has nothing to do with what happened in the past. Right?
If you view emotion as energy, is that energy in the realm of the person, or is it in the realm of awareness, or both?
See, here's the thing, Bob. I can give you a good academic answer to that question. You know what I mean? But it's not going to make any difference, because the only thing that's going to make a difference is for you to realize who's asking this question. That's the only thing that's going to make a difference. That's why Ramana Maharshi said to the people that came to him when they said that, right? Because here was a guy that was a renowned spiritual teacher, right? So of course people are going to come to him and try and, get the magic, right? And so they ask questions just like you did, right? But the only thing he would ever say is, who's asking? Who's asking this question, right?
The person's asking.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And once that problem's solved, guess what? There are no questions. There are no questions, because you're immediately available to what's actually happening, not an interpretation. If you get into an interpretation, all your interpretations build up into this, this mess of interpretations and understandings and beliefs and thoughts and past experiences, right? All that shit is in your head, is in your brain, is in your mind. And it's not organized in any realistic way. That's the problem. That's the problem. If I push the right button with you, right? If I push the right button with you, it's just like pushing a button on a Coke machine, right? It's like mechanical. I push the button, the brain takes that stimulus, looks in the database and history and says, oh, that's like this. So I'll behave this way because that's the way I behaved then. That's the only resource I have. That's the only way. And then after I behave that way, I say, oh, I must be crazy. Right? Isn't it true that in your everyday course of events, if you look closely, you'll see this. In your everyday course of events, you go crazy a lot. You go crazy a lot. Right? And the only way you can avoid like having that like drive you crazy, how crazy you are, right, is to ignore it. Right? So you're driving in your car and somebody cuts you off. That goddamn son of a bitch, who the hell do you think you are, right? You didn't do anything. That person doesn't even hear you, right? You didn't do anything but make yourself miserable. And then if it gets pointed out to you, you say, oh yeah, I'm driving myself crazy. So the thing is this, if you learn to meditate and you study the teachings, so you have the understandings of the meditation, what are you meditating for? You're meditating to develop a consistent experience of being awake. You're meditating to develop a consistent experience of experiencing reality as it is. Experience yourself as you are. And this is the case with you, or it's the case with anybody who's been in this class and really doing the work or doing the practice, right? That even though you're still more crazy than you are sane, right? At least there's two. At least there's a possibility, right? Before that, you were just crazy and that's all there was. That's just crazy and that's all there was. So now you have this possibility, oh, I may be crazy, but there are moments that I see it. There are moments that I see it. And when I see it and I see how it works, I realize that I could be aware and be present and function very effectively and be happy and have a peace of mind. All I have to do is stop depending on thinking as a way of existing. But in order to do that, I have to practice. And I have to understand that thinking's not going to stop. That's a misunderstanding. Thinking's not going to stop. But it doesn't have to bother you and it doesn't have to be a problem if you're paying attention. It doesn't have to bother you or be a problem if you're paying attention, because whenever thoughts arise that are unrealistic and stupid, you just redirect your attention. That's all. You just redirect your attention. That doesn't mean that all thoughts are bad. A lot of thoughts are practical, useful, even good, right? If you're paying attention and those thoughts arise, fine, no problem, no problem. You need to use thinking as a functional operation that you're in control of. You have to use thinking as a functional operation that you're in control of. Before that happens, you are a slave to your thoughts. A slave to your thoughts. And you don't have any control. And you are being drugged through a dramatic experience called life, right? And you, like everybody else, will do you'll do what's actually a smart thing. You'll try and avoid it. You'll try and avoid it, right? You'll try and avoid it by sleeping, by eating, by drinking, by thinking, by getting divorces, by getting rich, right? That's how people live, right? And all the while you're avoiding your own life. All the while you're avoiding your own life. And it's not necessary. It's possible for you to be free. This isn't new. This is thousands of years old. And so then the question arises, if this isn't new and it's thousands of years old, why isn't it popular? It seems to me that it should be popular. It seems to me that this should be what they're teaching in kindergarten, for Christ's sake, right? Well, the reason that it's not popular is because the reality as it's commonly understood is a function of what we agree that it is, not what it is. Okay? And when we agree what it is, and all of us, all billion of us, all 6 or 7 billion of us are operating in that agreement, right? That becomes truer than reality.
Group thought.
Yeah. Group thought. When the agreement becomes substantial enough, in other words, you're born into the agreements, aren't you? Yeah, you don't go to kindergarten and the teacher says, well, this is what society believes is true, and this is how they behave and everything, but this is the other possibility, which is experiential. You know, you can experience reality as it actually is. Which one would you like? You don't get a choice. When you go to school, it's like you learn this is reality. Not this isn't a version. They don't say this is a version of reality. No, this is reality. And the agreements that have determined that we all function as if that is reality is so strong and gets passed on from generation to generation that the reality doesn't stand much of a chance. Because reality is not a thought process. And it can't compete with a thought process, right? But it can be realized for what it is, and when it's realized for what it is, a thought process can't compete with it. Because what happens is you were a slave to your thoughts. Through meditation and understanding the truth, it reverses. Now thoughts work for you. Now you use your mind instead of it using you. That's what happens through the process. But it's a process that all along, the brain and the mind will keep upping the ante and fighting back, creating resistance to the process, right? Because the brain and the mind have been completely oriented and indoctrinated to the idea that if you come out of that understanding, right? If you come out of the belief that you're a physical body, if you come out of the belief that you're a personality, you'll be dead, you won't exist because that's all you really are, right? And the mind will bring that up and say, oh, you better be careful. You want this is a cult. You better be careful. Yeah, yeah. And if there's something that's realistically that you should be afraid of, it should be the thought process, not the self, not the awareness. The awareness is the reality of what you are. The thought process is a necessary functional situation, temporary, a temporary, necessary functional situation, just like the body, temporary, necessary functional situation. You can't be in the world without having a piece on the board. You can't be in the world without having a body. You can't be in the world without having a personality in the thought process, right? It's just part of a temporary functional situation. Right? But you can really have a good time and enjoy the experience, right, if you wake up before it's over. Capiche? All right, before I get in trouble because I am violating something. Yeah.